Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, in this video, I want to talk about a subject that's very popular and a very salient subject in mental health, which is the subject of humility. Humility. Okay, humility is a very important topic in the area of cluster B and NPD. Okay, because humility is essentially the opposite of arrogance. Okay, so um, just like we have a problem in the definition of empathy, where you have an emotionality bias driving a certain way of looking at empathy and the way that empathy is conceived, okay, as opposed to just caring about people, okay. Likewise, with humility, I think the emotionality bias that we see in psychology really focuses more on kind of like having a humble attitude and having a humble emotionality, okay, as opposed to actually being humble. Okay, so what would be the difference between the performance of humility or the emotionality of humility versus actually being humble? What is the difference? Okay, I invite everybody. I invite everybody to consider alternative definitions. Okay, to key terms. Okay, for example, if somebody shows me empathy the way it's commonly defined, okay, the thing that I'm concerned about is what would it mean to actually just care about people without the requirement of a certain emotionality. Okay, is it possible to just care about people without having to do an inventory about my emotions? I personally think that our emotionality is kind of like our genitals. Okay, that's a very private area, and I don't think we want to be messing around and kind of screwing with that. I think it's more dignified. I think in an honest way, not to worry so much about the emotionality and just honestly go straight to the issue, which is, do I care about people? Okay, so that's the empathy. Okay, so then what about the humility? Okay, again, I don't want to get into my own emotions. Do I have to perform, or do I have to find some special feeling in myself where I find the humility in my feelings? Okay, I don't feel comfortable with that. I think I trust that I will have the right feelings, and I'm not going to worry so much about that. What I'm more concerned about is what is actual humility. Okay, what is it? What is actual humility? Forget the attitude. Okay, forget the emotions. What is real humility? Okay, and so I propose the following. Okay, I've been talking in my videos about environmental taxation. Okay, everybody, all of us, in our personal environment and in our neighborhoods and in our localities and in our state, and especially in our personal life, friends, family, personal life. There's all kinds of things in our environment that are potentially environmental taxations. Okay, just as a quick example, if I am struggling between two job possibilities, let's say I have the opportunity to work in a call center where I can make $14 an hour, or I could work at an Amazon, whatever, and they might pay me more, might offer me more overtime or whatever, and I have to really think about these two options, or I could go into business for myself and maybe do some business, whatever. Whenever you have like alternative ideas that just sort of weigh on us, okay, we can try to quickly make a decision and just not worry about it, or we can just let them sit, okay, just dissonant possibilities just sitting on the table and just kind of weighing on us, okay. And I personally believe that we should deliver ourselves more into the weight of our environmental taxation and not try to resolve things so quickly. Okay. And that weight will help us grow the part of us that's missing, which is the part of us that just handles dissonances and just processes them. And that will train us not to be so cluster B, basically. Okay, so one example is like, what job am I going to have? Another example could be, should I move to another city? Another example, should I be in a relationship right now? Versus should I get healthier before I'm in a relationship? Or maybe I could be in a relationship, but is it better maybe to be friends for 2 years or a year? You know what I mean? Like personal decisions. I think as cluster B, I think we tend to go very fast into our decisions. Okay, and I think we tend to make very rash, very kind of unthoughtful decisions. I think it's helpful to just let issues just sit and just be uncomfortable and be dissonant. Okay, and just having things sit, just letting the environmental taxation just sit on our shoulders, that will allow a kind of metabolization that normally we really don't have a lot of, we don't get a lot as cluster B, because we tend to dispose everything very quick. Okay, so how do we apply that to humility? Okay, this is a perfect example, because if I follow what I believe I'm understanding from psychologists and from a mental health subculture, okay, I think that they're proposing that humility is an attitude. an emotional state and it's an attitude, okay, or it's an emotional posture, okay. Now, that's fine. I mean, being able to perform and having a performative version of humility, that may be important, but it's also important for us to consider what might actual humility look like. What might it look like to be truly humble, not just performing humility? Okay, and my suggestion is that the very issue of environmental taxation, okay, and bearing the burden of environmental taxation, that itself could be an answer, and that could actually potentially be what is true humility, which is actually being burdened, being truly, delivering yourself to and accepting the burden and carrying the burden of our environmental taxation. Okay, and nobody is poor in environmental taxation. There's an infinite supply of environmental taxation for every person, okay, regardless of cluster B or not. So in my environment, in my personal life, in my work life, relationships, family, there's tons of issues to just sit on the table and not resolve quickly. Let them sit, you know, and learn to let things process, as burdensome dissonances. Okay, like should I talk to my son about how he needs to be more responsible? Should I should I talk to my mother about how she's taking care of her health? Like all these little things. Like it's not that I won't do anything, but as cluster B, I need to let all these things just sit on the table and just weigh on me, okay? Because I tend, as a cluster B person, I tend to push off all the uncomfortable dissonant issues, and I tend to want things very quickly processed, okay? But I believe that issue of quick disposal, that is what prevents us from developing the dialectical richness and depth that could provide us with the true heart and the true actual caring, so that we don't need to talk about the buzzwords like empathy and humility. Okay. So, in other words, we won't have to talk about humility. We don't even have to raise the issue if I'm actually bearing the burden of my environmental taxation. Okay. And I seriously propose this as a way of recovering from cluster B, to assume the weight, okay, of all the environmental taxation and to carry the burden. Okay. Yes, we have to get adapted to that. You have to get acclimatized. We have to acclimate to that. But if we can learn to carry more burden and we learn to make that a way of living, it'll change our lives. And I guarantee you. I mean, I could tell you so many things. I mean, I used to be almost addictive in several areas. Okay, and I'm not like that anymore. Now I could always go back to it. I mean, I feel like I'm always just like 1 millimeter from a relapse. But I can just tell you that I've learned to carry burdens that before I thought were almost impossible. Okay, like I can work many more hours now than I used to. Okay, I can handle more conflict than I used to. Okay, I still have a bad temper, but I have developed and I've learned, I've acquired, a certain I've become conditioned, you know, to carrying more burden, and I know that I can because I have experience with it. Okay, so I really encourage anybody with cluster B to sort of build it up step by step, but just learn to carry more burden. Let's say if you have a really burning question, like a simple thing, it could be something simple like, should I just date this person? Or should I just be friends with this person? Or do I need to get in a relationship right now? That's a perfect example. And anything like that. Should I get Chinese food or should I cook at home? There's like infinite possibilities in our personal life of things that we can just weigh, just put on the balance scales, and just let the burden sit. And then over time, we will just metabolize those dissonances and we'll come up with insights and richness and depth on all those issues that we would never have a chance to develop if we had just been disposing of things. So like it may seem unbearable, like, oh God, should I get into a relationship? Should I just be friends? Why not just not answer that question right away? Why not let it sit? And I guarantee you that after 1 week or 10 days, you know, there will be a whole wealth of metabolic processing that's almost like building a new organ inside of you. And I propose that organ is really the heart, the poetic heart. And I think for anybody with cluster B, that's a very valuable organ to develop. And there's an infinite resource of dissonant environmental taxes in everybody's personal life. And when I say environmental tax, environmental taxation. I'm just saying anything that could weigh on you. Should I take the garbage out now, or should I wait? Or it's infinite. Learn to carry those burdens. Carry every burden in the personal space. Or step up to it. So basically, what I'm suggesting is that if when you really think poetically about what it means to carry a burden, okay, and how it sort of weighs on you, even though that sounds so humble, but it is humble. You know what I'm saying? That may be what humility really is, and it may turn us off because I think in our culture we're really turned off by humility. Okay, it's not a turn off to be performing humility. Like if I'm just some comfortable person just acting humble, I'm probably going to get applauses from the psychologist. The psychologist is going to congratulate me for being so humble. But we tend to be really turned off by actual humility, actually being burdened, really truly burdened, by the things that weigh on us, in our environment. Even I think a psychologist would be worried, like, gosh, carrying a lot of burden there, and they don't realize that that's the true humility after they just congratulated me for just acting humble. You see what I'm saying? So I think we need to be really careful. I think psychologists often are quick to applaud just the performance of what they really want from us as opposed to the real thing. Okay. And I really encourage anybody with cluster B, I encourage, just to experiment with it. Just understand that by carrying more burdens, carrying more burden in life, more assuming and delivering ourselves more into the environmental taxation. Okay. I challenge you that just holding burdens, holding dissonances in life, that will develop a metabolic organ, which is like a heart. It's like the poetic heart. And I think once you develop that, we don't have to talk anymore about how humble or how arrogant or how empathetic or how whatever, because we will care more, okay? And we will actually be more loaded down, which is the true humility, okay? And I'm sorry, but I think this is a perfect example where I think even a lot of psychologists are actually choosing the wrong definition for humility, And I think there is an emotionality bias and a bias towards performance, Of course, now the psychologists will say that, having my emotions is not a performance, but I challenge that. I think just having emotions, I think that is a performance, okay? And I think there's a difference between having an emotional state and actually bearing the burdens of life, okay? That there's a big difference because one is really just, honestly, it's just emotive. The other is actual, okay? And I think people with cluster B, the best therapy for us is actual burden experience, okay? The actually experiencing and taking on the burdens of life, okay? Now maybe step by step, okay? But just knowing that that's the best medicine for us, And once we get into the habit of that, I think we'll never want to look back. Okay, I guarantee you, I'm living proof. I am a terribly cluster B person. Okay, I was a gambling addict when I was 40 years old. Okay, I really hit a terrible rock bottom. I was a despicable, miserable person. Okay, I didn't even know how to relate to people, have friends. I didn't know how to respect people. I was completely, I'm sorry, despicable. Okay, and I could not organize my life to save my life. I couldn't keep a job. Okay, and I guarantee you that it was something so simple, okay, which I had to let go of all the psychologists because they were not helping at all. I'm sorry. And I had to find, instead of the emotive solution, instead of finding like the emotive performance, I had to actually deliver myself to the actual burden of life, taking on the actual burdens of life, every dissonance, okay, every load, and just learning how to be actually loaded down by the taxation of my environment. And I guarantee you that solved all the problems. Okay. I may not be perfect, but nobody who knows me in my close family could even say that empathy is an issue for me now. Or at least, even if they could argue the empathy, they can't say I don't care. Okay. Nobody who's close to me could say that I don't care. I do care. Okay. And everybody close to me knows that. Nobody could say that I'm too arrogant, okay? Because I think people would say, maybe they wouldn't say I'm humble emotionally, but I think anybody would say that I'm very loaded by the taxation of the environment, And frankly, I want to get better at it. I'd like to carry more load, okay? And I'm going to work on that, And that's a big issue for me. I'm making that a commitment, And again, people with cluster Bs, we don't make decisions. I'm sorry. The only thing we can do is make commitments. Okay. The only thing that has any value for us that isn't bullshit is a commitment. Okay. And I'm even saying that right here on camera that I need to take on more because I really believe this is our source of recovery, which is taking on environmental taxation. And I guarantee you that you don't need to act humble and you don't need to find an emotive semblance of humility when you are actually loaded down. Okay, so I really challenge anybody with cluster B issues or anybody who's interested in cluster B recovery to really consider what it means to have true humility, which is the actual being actually loaded down and actually delivering yourself and bearing the load of our environmental taxation. Okay, I really do believe that. I wish everybody the best. And let me tell you, I make these videos for one reason only. I I had a lot of trouble recovering from cluster B. Okay, and I want these videos available for anybody with cluster B who's just curious, who just wants to experiment. Okay, whatever I say here is only offered for experimentation. Okay, if somebody's struggling with cluster B and they just want some alternatives, they could try for 2 weeks. They could just try for a month, just trying new ways of thinking, new ways of sort of taking on the stress of life. Make just some alternative ways of thinking. And that's the only thing. That's the only reason I'm here, just to offer alternative ideas. From somebody who struggled himself, and I only have one target audience. I just want to reach out to people who are struggling either with cluster B or addictions or adjacent issues like say anger management or just wanting to improve their life. Young people, let's say young people who want to learn how to be more responsible. And not just follow like say the arrogant what is that arrogant Jordan Peterson bullshit. I mean, from the heart, from the heart. And so, anybody who's out there struggling with anything like a cluster B issue or a cluster B issue, just all I can say is you have to experiment, and I'm just offering one alternative for experimentation. So I just want to leave you guys with the idea of, consider the definition of humble as being truly humble and what it means to be truly humbled as actually taking on the burden of the environmental taxation that's all around us. Okay, taking on that taxation because some taxes actually pay off. Okay, that's all I have to say. Some taxes do pay off, and this tax, the environmental tax, this actually grows a heart, and so it's very much worth it for us to really deliver ourselves into the environmental taxation around us. So that to me is the only definition of humility that I think we'll ever need. But that's just my opinion. And thanks for watching. Take care.